They had been carved out from the ruins of the Ottoman Empire by Britain and France in the second decade of the 20th century. Another fairly direct consequence of the Middle East's brief era of European colonial rule featured heavily in the day's papers, as it had done almost every day in recent months: violence between Israelis and Palestinians. Some, especially in the Arab world, saw Israel's very existence as a colonialist phenomenon. Others blamed Britain, the former colonial power, for its early sponsorship of the Zionist movement. But many Israelis viewed their country's emergence and survival as an anti-colonialist story, involving struggle against both British and Arab imperialism. In Istanbul, the linguist and veteran political campaigner Noam Chomsky, best known for his many critiques of American imperialism around the globe, won a court case over Turkish government censorship of his writings on the Kurdish problem. This was in many eyes, though not in those of Turkish nationalists, yet another consequence of empire, in that Kurdish grievances in Turkey and elsewhere stemmed ultimately from their failure to achieve national self-rule when the region's old imperial system broke up in the early 20th century. For most, though, the dominant international story was the Hague trial of former Yugoslav leader Slobodan Milosevic, accused of war crimes in the Balkan turmoil of the 1990s. The conflicts in which Milosevic played so deadly a role are, on the long view, legacies of the Ottoman and Austro-Hungarian empires, which ruled the region until just over 100 years ago. More immediately, the wars in Bosnia and Kosovo, for whose conduct he was being tried, were ones where every participant, from tiny Albania to the American superpower, was accused of imperialist aggression by its enemies. The court where he was tried is, to some, also an imperialist creation. For such critics, the whole idea of universal human rights is actually a gigantic fraud, where Western imperialist or ex-colonial powers try to pass off their own, very specific and localized idea of what rights should be as universal, trampling roughly over everyone else's beliefs and traditions. The very structure of international law was created in the colonial era by the colonial powers. It is based on a mixture of Napoleonic, Anglo-Saxon, and before that Roman legal codes, owing nothing much to any non-European idea of legality. But then the legal systems of most ex-colonies, too, are based on those of their former masters. British Prime Minister Tony Blair had just returned from visiting various former British colonies in Africa. While there, he had urged that more must be done to help resolve those countries' endemic problems of poverty and unrest. The opinion pages and readers' letters columns of several newspapers carried numerous contributions to an argument, the latest of many such exchanges down the years, over how far the travails of independent Africa should be blamed on the colonial inheritance, and even whether Africa might be better off if the colonialists returned. Other correspondents, notably in the conservative Daily Mail, expressed outrage that British sovereignty over Gibraltar, one of its few remaining overseas dependencies, might be abridged. In Zimbabwe, as an election approached, the government accused the main opposition party of being a tool of imperialism and a threat to national independence, while it was itself alleged to be depriving white Zimbabweans, descendants of British colonial settlers, of their right to vote. The obituary pages of the day's papers also recalled Britain's long involvement with African affairs. For Maurice Foley, a Labour politician who had been one of Westminster's most prominent Friends of Africa in the 1950s and 1960s, had died. Blair, meanwhile, was under siege from accusations that he had used undue influence to help a British-based Indian industrialist, Lakshmi Mittal, acquire Romania's previously state-owned steel factories. This, too, was a post-colonial affair in several ways. An Indian businessman would surely not be running a British-linked company, nor making donations to a British political party if Britain had not once ruled India. To some critics, the fact that a Western company was buying up decrepit industrial plants in Romania